Gregor Samsa wakes up and finds that he has been transformed into a bug. But he's not really that concerned about this. He doesn't think it's that big of a deal. What is a big deal is that he overslept his alarm. It's 7 o'clock. He should have been up already. Oh, goodness. He's going to be late for his job as a traveling salesman. He needs to get into the office, otherwise, something bad might happen. And even though he hates his job, it makes him miserable. It's alienated him from all of his peers. He doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have any hobbies anymore, and it makes him exhausted and miserable. Well, he needs that job. He needs to get that money so that he can help his family. So Gregor is starting to try and get up, but it's a little hard to get out of bed with a buggy body. He's trying to roll himself over, and his mother comes to the door and knock, knock, knock. Gregor, what's going on? Why aren't you up? What? Your door's locked. I can't get in. What's going on? Why are you still in bed? And he calls out, "Oh, I'm okay, mother. I'll be there in just a minute." But, or something to that effect. And his mother reacts and goes, "Gregor, Gregor, what's wrong?" His voice, it doesn't sound human anymore. It's wrong. It's inhuman. It's off in a way that the reader is never directly described, but is deeply unsettling to his mother. She sends for a doctor and a locksmith to try and get so that she can get to Gregor and help him. But as Gregor is getting up and trying to get over to the door, a representative from his office shows up. Dun dun dun. "Gregor, where are you, Gregor? Why is their door locked? Why are you in your room? Why aren't you in at the office? There will be consequences if you do not get out of your room right now, Gregor, and get into the office. Your work has been subpar as of late." And Gregor goes, "Oh no, please, you understand. It's hard. I'll be there in just a second. I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming." And, all the while, the office representative is getting more and more frustrated, like waiting outside the door. And eventually, Gregor manages to get over, and using his unwieldy, buggy legs and head, he manages to get the door open. And everybody freaks out because there's a giant cockroach right there, and it is talking. Everybody starts screaming. The office manager runs out. Gregor does not get to keep his job, unsurprisingly. They weren't really looking to employ cockroaches the size of a person. And his father, seeing Gregor, freaks out, starts hissing at him and beating him back into the room with a broom. It actually breaks one of Gregor's legs. And in the process of doing this, and they lock Gregor back in his room, and Gregor goes to sleep. Part 2 starts. He wakes up and he finds that somebody's left him food, his favorite, fresh milk and some other stuff. His leg is also healed while he was asleep. He thinks that the person who gave him food is his sister Gretty, which is true, as proven later. But he finds that he can't. This food, it tastes really awful. I mean, it's all his favorite stuff, but he just, it's gross now. Being a bug means he doesn't like these things anymore. So he doesn't eat any of it. But at this point, Gregor turns introspective, and he starts going, "Oh crud, I was supporting my family with this job. I mean, as a traveling salesman, I was paying all the family's expenses, and after my father's business went under, a few years back, I became a traveling salesman to pay off that debt, and pay for the house and all these things. But now, they've saved some money up as he overhears, but it's not going to be good, and so they're going to have to start working, and that's not good. And he particularly feels guilty about his sister Gretty because he had planned to use some of the money he had been saving as a traveling salesman to send Gretty off to a conservatory because Gretty loves music. But now that dream won't ever happen, and he feels really guilty about that. The next day, Gretty brings in more bug-like food for him, rotten apple cores and stuff, and Gregor likes that. He's like, "Ooh, just kind of rotting food, leftovers. Very, very tasty, very, very tasty." And so Gregor is slowly starting to drift away from his human desires, becoming more bug-like, kind of alienating from humanity. Gretty takes over as Gregor's primary caretaker. She brings him food, cleans his room. His father starts working at some point during this period of time as as a bank attendant as well. Then one day, Gretty and Mrs. Samsa decide, skipped ahead actually. Gregor starts acclimating to his new buggy body. over this course of time, over like these few weeks, he finds that, ooh, hiding under furniture makes me feel real comfortable. Like, it's dark under here, I'm squeezing down, it's very nice, I'm very comfy. He also finds that in particular, he loves running up and down the walls. Like, ooh, like hanging from the ceiling, that's awesome. Gregor loves hanging from the ceiling. And Gretty notices this as well, so she goes, oh, we should take out the furniture so that Gregor can run around more freely. And Gregor goes, oh, that sounds nice. Then I can enjoy my wall climbing and running around, and it'll be all fun. That'll be, like, very nice for me. So Mrs. Samsa, who hasn't seen Gregor since the first morning of his transformation, comes in with Gretty, and Gregor's hiding under the sheets because nobody can stand to look at Gregor except for the charwoman who comes into the story later. And everybody who does kind of has like a very strong reaction to it. Gretty a little less so. She's a bit acclimated to it, but Mrs. Samsa, very much not so. She cannot look at Gregor. It distresses her immensely. So they start taking out furniture, and Miss Samsa goes, oh, don't you think that we should leave Gregor's furniture here so that when he does, if he becomes human again, he can go right back to being human? You know, we can just put all this nastiness behind us right away, and he can be human right away again. And Gregor goes, oh my goodness, how could I let this happen? I'm losing track of my humanity. I can't, nothing will be the same. I can't let them take this stuff away. So he runs out from hiding and puts himself on this picture that he has, this picture of woman in furs that he cut out of a magazine and put in like a little frame, and it's very pretty. And it was like his one like prized possession when he was still human. It was like the one thing he really still cared about or loved, I guess. Like it was like his one possession that he still cared about after like everything else had been stripped away by his work. It's his connection to his humanity. And then this upsets Gretty. Mrs. Samsa completely. His mother just freaks out. Like she pretty much passes out from all this. Freaks out, and Gretty is upset with him. And then when his father gets home, he finds out and he thinks, "Oh my goodness, Gregor attacked them," and so he attacks Gregor, starts throwing stuff at him, and it permanently injures him for the rest of the story. Gregor never recovers from these, and he gets like an apple lodged in his back that brings him like pain and it makes it hard for him to move around. That's where part 2 ends. Part 3 starts, and Gregor has been like sort of like locked in his room. Like he's occasionally given like a little room, like to leave it cracked so he can like look out and see what's going on. But basically, all he sees is that his family is slowly deteriorating under the weight of the work they've all had to do. Like his mom gets like a job, his sister gets a job, his father's getting a job, and it's like all slowly wearing them down. They're becoming more and more exhausted. They're miserable. It's harder and harder and harder for them to keep up with their debt. They bring in like a cleaner to help, called the charwoman. She calls Gregor dung beetle and generally harasses him, and they don't get along. She's not nice. But she is the one character who is able to look at Gregor without freaking out to any degree. She is completely unfazed by his appearance, which is unique to her. The Samsas at some point bring in boarders to, like they're renting them out to some space to try and bring in some extra income because they need the money. And while the boarders are there after dinner, Gretty starts playing the violin for them. Do, 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 do. And Gregor is lured out by the music. It speaks to something like he feels like human within him. Like he feels moved by the, emotions she's displaying through it. And then the boarders see him, and they freak out. They are very unhappy. They run back to their room. Mr. Samsa is enormously angry, and he sends Gregor back to his room. And when they finally close the door on him, Gretty has a complete breakdown. She goes, "Oh my god, it can't be Gregor in there. That bug can't be Gregor, because Gregor would have left knowing how much pain he's causing us. Gregor wouldn't stay if he knew. He must know how miserable we are, and he must know how much he's contributing to that misery. Gregor would have left. Gregor can't be in there anymore." And Gregor is heartbroken by this, and he goes, oh, no. A detail I forgot to mention up to this point. Through part 3, Gregor has barely been eating. He's slowly been starving to death. And after he hears Gretti's plea, he kind of just gives up and lets the darkness take him. He starves to death that night. He's found in the morning by the charwoman, who takes his body and kind of gleefully gets rid of him. She tells the Samsas about it, and the Samsas all kind of go, "Ooh, really?" They all have this moment of relief, things can get better now, is kind of their general thought. So they kick the boarders out. Charwoman gets fired. They all take a day off work, and they're all kind of quietly relieved about Gregor's death. Their hard times are over. They are free. They also realize that the state of their finances isn't as bad as apparently they realized, and they all take a day in the park, wander about, and the parents notice that Gretty, during the time of Gregor's transformation, has undergone a transformation of her own. She went from young girl to young woman, and it's time to marry her off. And that's where the story ends.